In the name of God, holy and undivided Trinity. So Jane and I had a terrible choice this weekend. We were up for Kenyon's graduation, one of our grandchildren. Graduated from high school, and there were 6 of us and only 5 tickets into the gymnasium where he was going to be processing. And so what to do? Would Jane and I split up? Because only one of us was going to get into the bleachers, or would we go together into the other area which was an auditorium? And the woman at the door said, "Oh, go to the auditorium. Go to the auditorium because you'll have nice cushioned seats. And if you stay in the gymnasium, you'll be on bleachers." Oh, and it's air conditioned in the auditorium. And in the gymnasium, it's not. It's going to be really hot in there. So we were convinced, even though we knew we were giving up the immediacy of sitting with our family and being able to be in the space with Kenyon as he received his diploma. So we did as we were advised, and we got a center seats in the first row of the second tier, and big screen, and everything was projected onto the screen, clear as a bell. We were able to take wonderful pictures. And we got very confused because we were going down through the list, 300 graduates. This does have a point. 300 graduates, and we knew when Kenyon would come up, so we had our camera ready and poised at the screen, and he didn't appear. And we're like, what? They skipped over his name, or he went so quickly that we missed him. And we're like, oh my gosh. And I said to Jane, well, you can't tell them that we didn't see him graduate. Let them tell us that he didn't come across the stage. So then and they would go, well, maybe there's something else. And indeed, at the end, he came up with other officers because he was in the student council, and he got his diploma at the end. Now, the thing was, if we were in the gym, we would have known the whole story, because we would have seen him standing at the side of the platform handing out flowers to the women who graduated, and he'd sort of assisting with the festivities. But because of our narrow view, as crystal clear as that view was, because of our narrow view, we missed the whole story. We just had a part of it. And I loved that when it came to preaching to this Sunday's propers, because for all of us here in our comfortable seats in the auditorium, years later, looking into the Gospels, looking into the readings, we have what seems to us to be a clear view. And indeed, it is clear for what it is, but what we don't have is the entire context. And there's so much else going on, and there's so much else that went on, and there's so much else that these readings have to do with that we can't see, because we see crystal clear this beautiful picture that's being presented to us of the apostles being sent out. Oh, how wonderful. And Abraham being confronted by the Holy Trinity, it appears, the one who's 3, and being told that he's going to be the father of many nations. And then he names his child Laughter because Sarah laughed. When Isaac comes, that's his name. He's Laughter because Sarah laughed. Well, the picture is so beautiful in and of itself. But we, from the distance that we have, can sometimes miss the application for our own lives, because it just seems like this narrow thing is happening, and we can sort of try to study it in great detail, and then we have missed, perhaps, the greater context, which is, how does it apply to your life and mine? How does it apply to the church today? What does this really mean for us? Because we're seeing this clipped out gospel, this clipped out Old Testament, and it doesn't sometimes stir your heart as you read it and you go, or hear it, and you go, oh, there's so much more here. So much more. Like, do you ever wonder about the apostles having been introduced as they were to the power of sending out demons and healing everyone and having all that authority. And then when Jesus dies on the cross, somehow there's nothing there for them? What happens? What happened that they could have had that experience during their time with him, and then at the time that he dies on the cross, they scatter and lose heart and they know nothing of what to do. They seem totally bereft, without any experience whatsoever on which to lean on. They hide. What's going on? There's something bigger here. There's something more that's being worked out. And Paul refers to it in his letter to the Romans. He says there's all sorts of sufferings, there are all sorts of things that happen in the circumstances of our lives, and we can't see the end product. We see it in this narrow little window of happenings, but God's doing something much bigger in your life through those things, and sometimes all we can see is the narrow little picture, and we don't know how God is using it in the great unfolding of his working out of life, working out of your life and our lives, of what it means to a community or to a culture, what's happening in the narrow little window of time. So the Gospels are, on the one hand, very clear, crisp pictures for us, and it's important that we be able to see them clearly for what they are. But what they serve is a doorway into the wonderment of what we cannot see, what's beyond the frame, what it is that God's doing in the bigger way that is where you and I get caught up in the mystery of it all and the wonderment. And God's life, the life that we've been given, is not something that you and I can get to a very fine clipped picture and then we know what it is. Your life and mine is always unfolding with circumstances that feel like bizarre, coming out of left field. What's going on? Like Jane and I looking for Kenyon and he doesn't appear. What's going on? Things in your life are happening right now, have happened, that leave you wondering, what in the world is going on here? The disciples who had all been equipped to cast out demons and heal the sick, and they were doing it, and then Jesus dies, and what? Now what? Now what? Well, Paul, again, writing to the Romans, says, that's not a place to lose heart. That's how God works out God's purposes in individual lives and in cultures, in the whole history of time. We can't see the whole picture. We just see a little bit. And that our trust is in God working it all through. And that we just hang on. So I have a little prayer. It's not my own. It's here in my pocket. It's a little picture. It's just a little frame, but maybe it opens up to a bigger space if you hold it. John Hall wrote this. Dear God, please help me. That's enough. Dear God, please help me. Dear God, please help me to be me and only me, to let you and only you be God, to let others be who they are, and to honor you as you honor each of us in Jesus Christ. Amen.